It is officially free agency week. New York Giants GM Joe Schoen kicked off year 2 of the rebuild by signing quarterback Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million deal. He has brought back Saquon Barkley for at least one more year, and they just re-signed Sterling Shepard for one more year. Coming up next, we'll take a look at some of the unrestricted free agents, the regular free agents, positions of need, and who the Giants might have an eye on. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. As always, I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please hit that subscribe button. Please do check out my Giants Country team. Some of the best writers, interviewers, podcasters, you name it. You like it when it comes to Giant content and analysis. Giants Country has it. Could also check out more takes on Twitter, TommyG105. Appreciate everybody that's been supporting so far. We've been trying to get in here almost every day, keep you up to date with the news, updates. It's been exciting, and it's only going to get more exciting this week. Free agency is upon us. Here it is, the chance for teams to get better, to build those rosters, to improve on last year, and it kicks off on March 15th. Technically, March 13th, there is some of that legal tampering business, whatever you want to call it, but it kicks off the 15th officially. GM Joe Schoen has already signed Daniel Jones, 4 years, $160 million, bringing back Saquon Barkley at 1 year, $10 million, and we caught news that Sterling Shepard is coming back on a vet minimum. Really quick, I'm kind of half and half on the signing. Obviously, there's not a Giants fan out there that doesn't love Sterling Shepard, which is kind of remarkable because he hasn't been healthy. I think it's been 5 seasons straight. He hasn't been able to play an entire season. He's missed large chunks of seasons so far. But you know what? He's a great leader on the sidelines, always brings the passion and emotions. We've all seen players that are out for the year, and you rarely see him again for the rest of the season, or you see him on the bench sulking. So you do have to give Sterling Shepard credit for that. Comes back on a vet minimum. And it's also good because you're going to have a young receiver core for the Giants, right? You know, if you anticipate bringing in a first-round rookie, obviously that's going to be the youngest receiver you have. And then you have Isaiah Hodgins, 24 years old, Wan'Dale Robinson, 22 years old, Colin Johnson, 25 years old, and Khalil Pimpleton, 24 years old. So there is some value in there with Shepard. And obviously Joe Schoen seen something he liked. Giants seem to be really interested in Odell Beckham, but we'll get to that later. So, first let's start off with cap space. Obviously, after the Jones and Barkley deals, that cap space took a hit. Giants are sitting at around $16 million right now available cap space. Once you cut Kenny Golladay, that's going to bring you up to about, let's say, $22 million. But there's still plenty more moves that you could make if you're Joe Schoen. You have Adoree Jackson, you could extend, restructure. You have Leonard Williams, who you could restructure, extend. If you sign Barkley to a long-term deal, that's going to free up some cap money for this season. There's a lot of different possibilities. I mean, you know, you've seen with the Saints when they got Carr, they had no money. They had nothing. They were basically picking change and lint out of their pockets, and they signed a quarterback to a huge deal, $37 million a year. So there are ways to manipulate that cap. And we'll see if Joe Schoen wants to do that. And I think he will. Word on the NFL streets is that the Giants want to be aggressive in free agency, and I don't blame them. You put $160 million into a quarterback. You're bringing back your running back, an Pro Bowl running back. And why not? You're coming off a 9-win season, a wild card playoff win. And I know some Giants fans are mad, and they're saying, well, we never really rebuild properly, and we should have tore it apart more. Who's to say that? This GM, head coach, coaching staff believe they have a franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones. And when they showed you that belief by giving him $160 million, that tells you they want to win now, and the plan is to win now. Same thing with bringing back Saquon Barkley, right? They want to win now. So if you want to win now, you got to go balls to the wall when it comes to free agency. So that's where I think it's going to be for Joe Schoen. You know, I think they're going to spend. I think they're going to get after it. I think you're going to see some big names. Obviously, the draft is going to be huge when it comes. Free agency usually dictates draft needs for the most part. But let's identify some of those needs right now for the Giants. And we'll get into a few players that I think could make it in Big Blue. So we'll kick it off right away. Wide receiver. Listen, if there's a bigger hole on this team, it's going to be hard-pressed to be past wide receiver. Linebacker's close. We'll get to linebacker too. But boy, oh boy, last season, You start the season with Kadarius Toney. He's gone before midseason, right? Start the season with Sterling Shepard. He's injured and hurt before midseason. Start the season with rookie Wan'Dale Robinson. He's gone before midseason injured. You start the season with Kenny Golladay, and we'll leave Kenny Golladay out. Either way, you could see what I'm saying. What Daniel Jones did down the stretch was remarkable. He did it with a 5th-round pick in Darius Slayton, a 7th-round pick in Richie James, and a mid-season waiver wire pickup in Isaiah Hodgins. Now, let's get him some weapons. First one up, Odell Beckham Jr., everybody's favorite, trying to catch lightning in a bottle. So, familiar face. Obviously, Odell was nothing short of spectacular in his time with the Giants. Kind of ended unceremoniously when he was traded to Cleveland. And I always feel like as far as, when you talk to Giants fans and you see, there's always that unfinished business, kind of that, cut off at the knee type of feeling that we never really got to see Odell's career finish and flourish towards the end of it. So I think that there's a lot of, you want to catch lightning in a bottle. I think there's a lot of that, I don't know if you want to call it bromance part of it, where have him come back home, finish what he started. Not that easy, though, right? So when you really look into it, you have a new front office, which benefits Odell. Obviously did not end well with the prior regime. Giants lack talent at the wide receiver position. That's an understatement. And Odell looked good in his workouts. He worked out for a bunch of teams. He was catching them one-handed like he always has. Looked really, really good out there in those workouts. But snagging the deal might be money. And by all accounts, Odell wants upwards of $20 million a year for his services. And it's tough when you think about it. This is a wide receiver that's coming off a torn ACL. Didn't play the entire last season. His last game was the prior Super Bowl. He's torn 2 ACLs. It's not old by any means, but he's starting to get up there. And you want $20 million a year. That's tough. I mean, with a history of injuries, not many believe he's going to be a number 1 wide receiver. Let's put it that way. Now, can he be a number 2 wide receiver and still have that big play potential? Absolutely. And I think that's what the Giants are interested in. But you don't pay $20 million for that a year. And I don't care how the market is skyrocketing. I don't care about Christian Kirk last year. $20 million for a number 2 receiver, just not happening. It's just not going to work that way. So that's going to be interesting to see if Joe Schoen, brings Odell back, says, hey, you know what? Shepard's here, Barkley's here. We're getting the band back together. Obviously, also with Odell, you can't leave out. He does come with a little bit of that, we'll call it the extra stuff. Obviously, had the plane incident when he was in New York the first time. Had a couple instances then. So he's usually, his name is out there. Let's put it that way. So that's something you have to pay attention to. You don't want that influencing a young team. I personally think that Odell is past that. Obviously, the plane situation stunk. Wasn't good for anybody. Wasn't a good look. But we'll see. Will Joe Schoen go for that $20 million? Will he unite Daniel Jones and Odell Beckham together? And can Odell be that number 1 receiver that Jones needs? This team has a Wan'Dale Robinson who could probably be a number 2 receiver. This team has an Isaiah Hodgins that could be a number 2 receiver. They need a number 1. They need that guy to come on board. So I'm not sure if Odell will fit that. We'll see. But that's my first target for the Giants. By all accounts, they're super interested. You're starting to hear Odell is already discussing deals with some other teams. That's another interesting part of this. Possibly another team comes and snags him. So we'll see when it comes to Odell. Number 2 on the list, Giants needs, wants, and who I think would be a good fit at receiver, Paris Campbell. He's going to be a little bit cheaper. So Paris Campbell, obviously coming from the Colts, caught 63 passes last season. The key here with Campbell is he could provide that top-end speed. This Giants wide receiver core last year, you've heard me say it many times on the show, was the slowest weighted 40-time group in the NFL. And now you take away most likely Darius Slayton, who you're starting to hear now. Joe Schoen is still interested in bringing him back, but it has to be at his number. You know how that goes. So I wouldn't expect Slayton back. Campbell brings that speed, and he's a very advanced route runner. He can run every route in the route tree. Obviously a slot guy, so you still got to figure out that X receiver position, whether that's going to be, Colin Johnson maybe could step in there. I don't know. Maybe you can play Hodgins out there, whatever might have you. Campbell's a slot guy, but he's blazing fast, only 25 years old. Really made the most out of a season last year when they had a porous QB carousel situation going on there, unfortunately, and he played pretty well. So PFF predicts a 3-year, $22 million deal for him. You're looking at decent money for him, and that's the issue with this wide receiver market this offseason is that, yeah, it's slim, and you don't have the top end receivers. Mecole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jacoby Myers. Those are the top guys considered in this class. They're still gonna get a lot of money because teams are still gonna need wide receivers. So even though they're not top end and really not many, you could really say none of them are number one wide receivers. Maybe Jacoby Myers is the closest, but Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't really view him as a real number one. Mecole Hardman has never really got to show that, right? Adam Thielen has kind of passed those days, even though he was still productive. So I like Paris Campbell. I think that's a decent contract if you can get him in that range. He brings speed. He can run any route in the route tree. You throw him in a slot and let him get busy. So that's my number 2 for wide receivers to keep an eye on. And number 3, we'll go right with the top, Jacoby Myers. This, to me, the best receiver in the class. Highest graded out of all the receivers in this class. In his 4 seasons with New England, 230 catches, 2,758 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, big, physical. He can go up there and catch those one-on-one balls, those toss-up balls, those hard-to-catch balls. He has all the tools to make those tough catches. Also had a 3.1% drop rate, which puts him 9th in the NFL. That's good. Giants have struggled with drops at the wide receiver position. Obviously, last season with Slayton, Richie James had some big drops there. So that's a plus. Only drawback is speed. He runs a 4.63 roughly, and that was the last time he was, measured in the 40. Who knows what he is now, but doesn't have that breakaway speed. If you do get him, you do need another, in my opinion, wide receiver to add on to this team with speed, because not only does this Giants team need a wide receiver, one, they need a speedy receiver. If you lose Slayton, you have no more speed on this roster at the wide receiver position. So if you go and sign a Jacoby Myers, that's going to have to be a 1A, 1B type of deal where you go and get a faster receiver, whether that's in the draft or you sign a really low-end free agent, still going to need that. So those are my 3 picks for wide receiver to keep an eye on for the Giants. You have Odell Beckham, you have Paris Campbell, and then you have Jacoby Myers. So, and either way, the funny part is you're going to spend a lot of money. There's no way around it. That's the market. That's supply and demand. Going to spend a lot of money on the wide receiver market. Brace yourself. For all the penny pinchers out there that are Giants fans, you're going to spend some money here. It's going to happen. If you want to get Danny Dimes some help, and he definitely needs some help, going to spend some money. Same thing with the tight end market. If you want a Gesicki, right? It's going to cost you money. That's just the way the NFL is when it comes to these specific positions. That's why if you are a fan of the show, you've heard me harp on this. Better to address wide receiver in the draft because that is that high dollar amount position. You don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball, especially with a free agent class that doesn't have a clear-cut number 1. So you're going to spend $13-14 million a season on one of these guys, and probably just going to be another number 2, and you're going to have a bunch of number 2s and 3s out there. So that's where I'm at with that. But the next need for the Giants is a huge one, linebacker. Giants haven't drafted a linebacker in the first round since 1983, I believe, when it was Carl Banks. Haven't really prioritized the position as much as they should have, in my opinion. Obviously, they had Antonio Pierce, who was a great player for that 2007 team. But since then, really hasn't been much, honestly. If you look at this Giants team when it comes to linebackers, I mean, pick your poison. Hasn't been many good ones. But I think that changes this offseason. Just checking something real quick. 1984 was Carl Banks. Round 1, pick 3. Last time Giants took a linebacker in the first round. But free agency, you got some good ones. And I'm not against going linebacker in free agency because this is a very good class in comparison to the weak wide receiver class. Linebacker number 1 to keep an eye on, Tremaine Edmunds. Edmunds easily the class of this free agent group for linebackers. Also has ties to Giants GM Joe Shane from his Buffalo days. Edwards is only 25. He got in the league when he was 19. He's 25. He's a premier inside linebacker, coming off 5 straight 100-plus tackle seasons, 2 Pro Bowl appearances. Last season was actually the first time in his career that he missed more than 1 game, so he's usually healthy. Finished 2023 with a career best 6.5% missed tackle rate, which is awesome. Huge at the inside linebacker spot. You've seen the issue the Giants had defending the run, especially at that linebacker spot. So he fills that role. Some people say he's not the best run defender, but he has improved year by year with his run defense. Only question is, honestly, money. So with being the premier linebacker in this free agent class, it's gonna be expensive, and he's looking for upwards of $20 million. So if you want Tremaine Edmunds, you're gonna have to spend some money. He's gonna be number one in that class. To me, he's worth it. You got a Giants team that gave up almost 600 yards rushing combined to the Eagles in those 2 games that the starters played. What do you do at linebacker if you're the Giants, right? You got Darian Beavers, was a rookie last year, didn't play 1 snap. Brought back Gerard Davis. He's only going to be there for depth, right? Draft one possibly. I mean, you got to do something, because if this Giants team could not stop the run like they did last season, there ain't going to be any playoffs. So Tremaine Edmunds is my number 1. Before we do my number 2, make sure you drop a subscribe down there. That really helps me out if you subscribe. I really appreciate it. Check the drop. Right, now time for my number 2 linebacker that I think would be a good fit for the New York Giants. TJ Edwards. This kills 2 birds with 1 stone. You get a good linebacker. You take a good linebacker from your division rival that kicked your butt last year. And I like Edwards. Went undrafted in 2019. Chip on his shoulder. Ever since 2019, he has improved every season. He's went from 30 tackles to 70 tackles to 130 tackles. Last season he had 159 combined tackles, which was good for 5th in the NFL. 6th overall inside linebacker graded by PFF. 19 versus the run. 6th in coverage. So he does it all. I mean, he really does. And when you look at a player like TJ Edwards, that's the linebacker you want. You want a linebacker that has that chip on his shoulder, right? You want a linebacker that could do it all. He's young, right? He's shown that he could play and produce at a high level. 160 tackles on that Eagles defense. Obviously, come over to the Giants, different personnel, different scheme, but I think he would do a great job here. Edwards, probably going to cost you around $12 million a year, a lot cheaper than Edmonds. So, going to be interesting to see. Do the Giants want the best in class in Tremaine, or do they want to drop down a little bit of Edwards? I think they can get by with Edwards. Obviously, the Giants' D-line is very, very good. If Aziz could stay healthy, Thibodeau could stay healthy, these guys could really, really make some noise. And you put Edwards behind that D-line, and he could get busy. He could drop 160 tackles in New York just like he did in Philly. So that's my number 2 linebacker that would look good in blue. Now, number 3. This was an interesting one. I kind of went back and forth on this one. David Long from the Tennessee Titans has all the abilities. He's 26 years old, finished with the 12th overall PFF grade for inside linebackers, 27th in coverage, but 5th against the run. And while that 27th in coverage may scare you a little bit, the important part is the 5th against the run, because that's what the Giants need at inside linebacker. Is it good to have a balanced inside linebacker that can cover? Sure. But the Giants need an inside linebacker that can get in there, read those A and B gaps, stuff the hole, use the proper shoulder leverage, do the right things when it comes to an assignment. They need that type of linebacker, and David Long is that. Extremely smart, productive. 4 seasons in Tennessee, he had 226 tackles, 4 interceptions, 12 pressures, while playing in only 50 games and only starting 26. So he hasn't been used a ton, but when he is out there, he has played very well. Now, the reason why I have a drawback here is injuries. So, missed the final 5 games last season, right? Only played in 10 games the season before. Giants don't want injured players. Giants have had plenty of injured players out there. That's the last thing you want if you're Joe Shane in this Giants team. You don't want injured players. Enough is enough. Last season was magical. It was an awesome run, best season in a decade, and almost came to an end early because of injuries. So you have to be careful when it comes to injured players. And Long checks the boxes. He's smart. He's athletic. He's productive. He can play against the run. He can play against the pass decently. Checks all the boxes. But last thing you want to do is projected contract's going to be around $12 million, is drop, $35, $40 million into a linebacker, and he's injured within 3 games. So that's something to keep an eye on for Long. Those are the three linebackers I would look at if I were the Giants. So you got Tremaine Edmonds, you have TJ Edwards, and you have David Long. All bring different things to the table. All have their opportunities, their strengths. Depends what Joe Shane is looking to spend, honestly. Edmonds is going to get you about 20 million. Long and Edwards is going to be about 12 million. So obviously a big difference when it comes to that. And it all depends too what Wink wants. What's a better fit for Wink? I think Edmonds is the better fit, honestly, because he could cover the pass and the run at the highest level out of all these linebackers and the most balanced. And I don't care that people say he can't cover the run because he does a good job against the run. I like Edmonds, has the Buffalo ties. Would not be surprised if the Giants get a deal going with Edmonds this week. Would not be surprised at all. And boy, do they need it. So those are my three linebackers. You got your receiving core. You got your linebacking core. Now we'll kind of go through some odds and ends. There are other positions out there that the Giants, it's a weakness. So, you have cornerback. Tight end is not a weakness, but always good to have good tight ends in this league. Love Daniel Bellinger. I think he's only going to grow as a player. Was coming on last season before he had that nasty eye injury that put him out for a few games. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. But, there's other players out there. You got a Mike Gesicki from Miami. Yeah, he's going to cost a premium dollar, but the guy could catch like a wide receiver. He could run like a gazelle. Okay, he doesn't run block, but you're not bringing him here to run block, right? That's not what he's coming for. So someone to keep an eye on is Gesicki. You've been kind of hearing whispers that the Giants are connected to him a little bit. Should be interesting there. I also have Irv Smith, another good tight end to keep an eye on that the Giants could bring in. Solid across the board. Not too good at anything, but not too bad at anything either. Cornerback's another interesting position. So if you're the Giants, when it comes to cornerback, you really only have one short thing, and even that's almost not so sure. So you have Adoree Jackson, who is the number one corner, played extremely well last season, but was hurt, and he's been hurt several times in his career, and that's your number one guy. Then you have Aaron Robinson, who unfortunately can't see the field. He had the appendectomy. He had the knee injury. You don't know what to expect out of him. And right now he's penciled in as your second cornerback. So that's scary. Then you have your slot situations. That was a Freudian slip. Put Flott in the slot, right? That's going to cure everything. Still a young player. Still has to build his body, his frame, his physique. I don't think Darnay Holmes comes back next year. I really don't. I think he's going to be a cap casualty, unfortunately. Really sloppy last season, technique-wise, too handsy. So you could have cornerback up there as a huge hole. You have Cameron Sutton, started 15 games last year. I think he would be a good fit for the Giants, honestly. Good man skills for Wink's defense. I think he fits perfectly in that D. Secondary-wise, when you look a little deeper, Jordan Poyer from the Bills has really been linked to the Giants a lot. Julian Love, unrestricted free agent. We'll get to unrestricted free agents in a second. Maybe Jordan Poyer comes in. Obviously, he's going to cost. I don't really see the sense in bringing in a Jordan Poyer if you're going to let Julian Love walk. If that's the case, you just roll your dice this year, with a combination of a Dane Belton. Maybe you bring back a Pinnock, whatever that is, draft somebody a little bit later. I don't see the sense in letting Love walk and bringing Poyer in for around the same money. Poyer's a better player, but, Love's a pretty solid player too. So that's kind of where we're at. As far as the positions, I don't think the Giants will touch, obviously, quarterback. I don't think they're going to touch running back. Obviously, a lot of people out there were talking about Boston Scott, killing two birds with one stone. Don't think that'll happen. Wide receiver we touched on. Tight end we touched on. Offensive line, that could be a good one. But offensive line is also expensive. I look for the Giants to address offensive line in the draft. But who knows? I mean, they could address it in free agency. It's possible. A couple good centers out there, a couple good guards. We'll get into that probably in the next episode. But linebacker, receiver, those are the two big key positions. Now, if the Giants don't make a move in those positions, I wouldn't fret too much because you do have the draft coming up. You have 11 picks. I would hope they make a free agent splash in at least one of those positions. I think it's going to be linebacker. I think a receiver, it's just the talent is not there. The talent level for the amount of money you're going to spend, 12, 13, 14 million a year, is not there. Maybe you bring in Odell like we mentioned. That'll be interesting. Something keeps bringing me back to that Odell Giants feeling. I just feel like that's going to happen for some reason, like it's meant to happen. As far as unrestricted free agents, so we got news that Sterling Shepard is back. I touched on it in the beginning of the show. Very, very interesting. And you know what? Good for Sterling Shepard. he's been injured basically most of his career, has always been productive in the NFL when he was healthy. But it's just, it's tough. The guy's been through every injury in the book. When you look at it, it's just remarkable. Whether it's ACL, Achilles, it's just unbelievable. You're looking at some of these numbers from his injuries, it's just remarkable. So I wouldn't expect him to play a full season, in all honesty. I don't think that's what he's being brought back for. I think he's brought back for that mentor. You hope you could get lightning in a bottle with him and he'll play, 10 games, 12 games. Last season only played 3 games. Did have the big catch in Tennessee. But, look at this. He only played 3 games last season, 7 games the year before, 12 games in 2020, 10 games in 2019. So his last full season was 2018. The year before that, he missed 5 games. So it's tough, but we'll see what happens. It's a minimum deal, vet minimum deal. He could work with some of those young wide receivers. He can get things going there, and obviously brings a ton of energy, ton of excitement in that leadership role. As far as anyone else coming back, there are some whispers that the Giants do want Darius Slayton back, but they want him back at their own price. That usually means the deal's not going to be met, unfortunately, because player sees his value one way, team sees it the other way. I don't think Slayton comes back, but that's what also makes this free agent wide receiver class interesting, right? Because Slayton's right up there at the top. There's not many of these guys that are much better than Slayton. Myers, maybe McCole Hardman, but he's right there at the top. So Giants have a need at wide receiver. They're looking at the top of the free agent class, and their own unrestricted free agent is sitting there. So that'll be interesting. Richie James, not sure if he'll come back or not. Probably not. I don't think that happens. Next is Julian Love. Kind of hearing some of the same thing. The Giants want Love back at their price. I don't think Love comes back. I don't think it's that big of a hit to the Giants if he doesn't come back. Yes, he's been tough, dependable. You can count on him. Versatile. He's been unselfish. Almost kind of has hurt himself in the long run by being so unselfish because he hasn't settled in at one position. But I think he's going to get a lot of money. I think he's going to get upwards of $9 million a year, and I don't think the Giants need to pay that. You're going to have to pay McKinney the following season, right? You want to pay Xavier McKinney. He's going to be a dynamic safety in this league, and you don't pay 2 safeties. I don't think you do it, but I could be wrong. That's how I feel with the Love situation. As far as any other unrestricted free agents coming back, whether it's Feliciano, Breida, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that's kind of last on the agenda. But free agency is up this week. It's going to be a huge opportunity for Joe Shane. Critical time for him. Year 2 in the rebuild. He pushed his cards to the table, his chips, with Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. Now Sterling Shepard is back. You're all in. It's time to win. You pay a quarterback $160 million. It's time to win. So I think Joe Shane's going to make some serious noise in this free agency. It's going to be exciting. I gave you the 2 positions that the Giants need the most. I gave you 3 players at each position to keep an eye on. And that's it for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Please do hit that subscribe button. Close to 600 subscribers. I appreciate all 591 of you. Means the world to me. Check me out on Twitter, TommyG105. Check out my Giants Country team. And we'll be right back with some more free agency stuff. For now, peace.